I will be talking about the connection between sales and marketing teams today, and what we can do from a digital marketing perspective, how it connects with a business's kind of holistic view, and how we can kind of connect teams for cohesion across the board to make things work better for everyone. So I am going to share my screen really quick. And let's hope I get the right one. All right, are we seeing, can somebody thumbs up or thumbs down? Are we seeing the title slide of a presentation?
Yeah, looks good, thanks.
Okay, awesome. So conversations sales and marketing teams should be having, really just taking a higher level look at kind of what priorities are, self-identified priorities for marketing teams, where those connections may be breaking down, and different ways that I have seen, to connect them and why we want to connect them. So to kick us off, we have some statistics here. Just high level, looking at, from a self-identification standpoint, it looks like a quarter of companies have identified some misalignment between their sales and marketing teams, which kind of feeds into those top two bullet points there. We don't want sales teams or marketing teams or anyone to be spending a big chunk of their time on things that are not going to, feed the bottom line. So everything we talk about today is kind of circle back to increasing and improving on these points here. This is a graphic from the CMO survey, which looks at big businesses, marketing individuals within those businesses, and kind of polls them on various aspects of marketing, sales, digital, kind of the gamut. So another view of what we were looking at on the previous slide, investments companies made to improve performance of digital marketing. We can see a big chunk of that is on analytics and marketing technology and media and search and things like that. Things that are trying to drive increases to the bottom line. Not a whole lot though to focus on efficiencies or things that way. So the challenge we're seeing here when you look at these data points, the data points on the previous slide, is that you can have really top drawer marketing strategies and really excellent salespeople, but if they're working independently of each other and they're kind of existing in silos of their own environment, it might not be enough moving into the future where the digital landscape has been increasing at such a rapid rate, and we really need to work together to be able to close the deals that marketing teams are bringing in. So how does misalignment happen? Why does it matter? We're looking at a couple of themes here. I've broken it down into a couple of big themes. The top one, I would say, and maybe the most common in my experience, is different thoughts on lead goals. Sales team looks at things differently than a marketing team looks at things. So the goalpost might be different just because we're talking about different things and we don't realize it. Disorganized lead tracking process. The way that marketing tracks leads and the way that sales tracks leads might look different. Sales tracks after the fact, after they get to the website, after they call on the phone, all the way through to that closed deal. A lot of the times marketing tracks to the website or to that initial interaction, and then not much further after that. And then inconsistent communication across teams. I think a lot of things with misalignment come down to communication. So just making sure that everybody is consistently providing feedback and sharing what they're seeing and performance can kind of all feed into that 25% of businesses that are seeing or perceiving some sort of misalignment between their sales and their marketing teams. So looking at all of these, how do we then create alignment? We've identified a challenge here. So what can we then do as people who exist in a team environment to improve on it? So what questions should we be asking of each other? Number one, creating communication and consistency with communication across teams. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. We all talk about it, I think, all the time. Establishing regular cadence of communication, I think, can take care of.
Great, thank you.
Can take care of those top 2 points. Sorry. So just making sure that your sales team, your marketing teams, your executive level, the technical side of things is really just having an open communication all the time, once a month, once a quarter, just to stay on top of what everyone is doing. I think that can help everyone internalize the value of what each other is doing. Sometimes we get so in our own environments that we're looking at our metrics and we're looking at our performance, and we forget that other people are looking at other things. So remembering the value of each team and what they provide. And then just determining consistent definition. So having regular communication can help identify where that communication, like nomenclature is breaking down. Marketing calls it a lead, sales calls it a prospect, making sure that we're all aligned on the same thing and making sure that we're talking about the same things. Understanding the impact of marketing in the full funnel. Communication can lead into this too. The traditional view of the marketing funnel does not take into account also how digital has expanded. So we're looking here at marketing strategies, higher level strategies, prospecting for new customers, getting them into the funnel. They move through it, sales closes a deal. And that's kind of the perspective that we're getting with the traditional view of the marketing funnel. We know that users enter and exit the funnel at many different points from many different channels with social media and Google and organic channels and print channels and things like that. People are getting exposed to brands and sales pitches and things like that from so many different areas at so many different points in the sales journey now. Understanding how each of them work together and the value that each channel and each point in the funnel provides to really each other. So how does, somebody coming in off of a paid ad then influence how they interact if they enter through a social media post or something like that? Really looking at it holistically rather than just taking such a traditional view of things can help create some alignment as well. And then I think one of the biggest pieces here about aligning on your sales and marketing teams is looking at leads and the accountability for leads. So what is a lead? Defining what it is for both teams and the perspective of marketing and the perspective of sales, making sure everyone understands what the definitions are, what we're looking to drive, and then who's responsible for what. So is the marketing team responsible for just getting people in the door, no matter who they are? And is the sales team only responsible for those endpoint closed deals? Or is marketing, responsible for getting qualified people in the door who end up connecting with sales in some way or the other? So really identifying what we're looking to drive, who is responsible for each of those things that we're trying to drive, and how to continue moving things forward. So looking at leads and accountability, another piece from the CMO survey looks at the metrics that marketers have identified as being important to their business. If you notice in the bottom right corner there, impact on sales and sales lift is the largest piece here. So the most people have identified that as being like one of the top most important metrics to look at. But if we're experiencing this misalignment between sales and marketing, how do we measure that impact and lift? Are they measuring it the same way? Are there differing data points depending on what you're looking at? Just so really making sure everyone is aligned on what that means and what feeds into it. And then also, if you notice, ROI is one of the smaller pieces up there. So if sales lift is one of the biggest, should we also be looking at the efficiency of that sales lift? So if we're spending more than we're earning, is it actually impactful sales lift? So just kind of closing the gap on that a little bit as well. Some of these conversations and alignment between teams can help even outside of identification and things that way. This is another kind of facet of that same view. At the bottom here, you can see lead conversions are the biggest part of, at the bottom is lead conversions, which is the biggest part of what goes into sales impact and lift. This is a measure of, how consistently marketers are measuring certain metrics. So at the very, very bottom, we can see, less than half of businesses are measuring converted leads all the time or consistently. But at the top, sales and revenue are tracked most of the time, all the time. But if we're not measuring converted leads should equal sales, right? So should we be measuring them both consistently? They should both be looked at more consistently. How can we make sure that lead conversions are being followed up on in a way that is valuable to the business and that feeds into the understanding the value of that lift in sales? So just making sure that we're looking not only into the endpoint, what we're looking for was an impact, which is the impact on sales, but looking into the why and the how. So why are users converting? How are they converting? Where are they coming from? And we can do this through creating a lead flow process. So this is kind of a reimagined marketing funnel, so to speak. So has all of the normal steps that you would expect to see in a traditional marketing funnel with an additional one at the bottom, where the sales team would document everything that happens after they close a deal. And this would allow that information to be fed back to the marketing teams, to the PR teams, to the analytics teams, really everyone who's involved in this customer generation process, so that we can understand what's working, what is getting people to that closed deal, and then we can feed that back into our strategy so that we can keep doing more of what's working and continue, refining this reimagined funnel and qualifying, further qualifying the people that we're reaching out to kind of, like Elizabeth said, really, really hone in on our target markets and our target audiences, understanding who they are and what they want, so we can reach more and more of those types of people. There are a handful of ways to do this. It does not always mean adding a step for your sales team. I know in the view of a business or in the operational side of a business, it's adding a step for someone or adding a piece of a workflow can be a pretty daunting thing. So there are tools that we can use, integrations and automations that we can use to keep track of leads after they've reached the sales team. And I'm going to go through an example in a couple of slides using Google Ads, which is one of the most used digital marketing platforms from an ads perspective. First, I'd like to take a look at how machine learning and automation and things like that is currently being used. It's still very much in the beginning, very much kind of low usage right now. It's still learning and trying to get better and better. But the surveyed marketers from the CMO survey expect to see really, really huge growth over the next 3 years. So we're talking about scaling and how do we scale efficiently. Bringing in the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning really has become a center point of business efficiency and digital marketing efficiencies specifically. So looking into an example here, Google Ads has a tool called offline conversion importing. And there's a lot of kind of technical looking things here, but basically the way that this works is when a user clicks on an ad, they're assigned an ID. We are able to track that ID from the ad to a website, and then from the website to the offline conversion action that they take, whether they sign a contract or work with a salesperson to complete a deal or something to that effect. So even if that endpoint sale doesn't happen online, we have all the information to track that endpoint sale all the way back to the beginning of an ad click. And because we have that ID, we're also able to track the value of that sale or that lead, the time between the first interaction to the close date, all of these really, really high value data points that we can then pass back into our marketing strategies. So the way that works, this is a screenshot from inside Google Ads. Basically, we're able to create actions in our Google Ads accounts to track these IDs, to then pass information from your internal systems, your CRM systems like HubSpot or Salesforce, back into Google Ads. So this would be an Excel sheet or a Google sheet that we would be able to have export and then upload directly into Google Ads. It sounds, I think, more complicated than it probably is, but essentially it's helping us close the loop. So with digital marketing up to this point, we've really been able to get very, very deep on tracking users before they interact with an ad, track their interaction with an ad, and then to your website. But then kind of what happens after the fact, right, has been this question mark for us. This helps close that gap. So we're able to now see further from initial lead action, go to your website, fill out a form, call a salesperson. What happens after that? We're then able to pass that back. And with those unique IDs, we're able to tie it to specific keywords, to audiences, to campaigns, to really, really help us inform as marketers our strategies. It can also help Google's machine learning and algorithms to consume good information so that we're able to get better information out of it. So passing back, which keywords or audiences are getting us the most endpoint revenue and really focus on them, and which ones are maybe getting a lot of traction but not resulting in anything, so that we can reallocate and better focus in on valuable strategies. So what are the benefits of this? Why should we do it? Why should we bother, going through the process of pulling all of this information, setting it up, creating these meetings and this communication and these workflows between teams, like what is the bottom line to the business about all of it? Pretty big performance increases. So when sales and marketing teams are aligned, over 200% more revenue can be generated from marketing. This feeds back into that kind of reimagined sales funnel. When we're passing back information on what's working, we can do more of what's working and then scale on it. So we're not only working in an environment of ads, looking at ads performance by itself, we're passing back endpoint business information back into our strategies. And then alignment between teams can also improve close rates for the same reasons. We're getting more qualified people in at the beginning who are more ready to convert, to purchase, to make a sale. So it can improve sales close rates as well, just by nature of getting better prospects into the funnel for them to work with, rather than having to weed through a good amount of unqualified traffic. So I have a case study coming up looking at a B2B business in the industrial manufacturing space, where we have started, we identified this challenge here. We went through the process of having the necessary conversations between Workshop as a marketing partner and their internal resources and their sales teams. So the case here, we realized that we had kind of, as a marketing partner, had kind of no visibility or very little visibility into their endpoint sales information. So we could see that we were driving all this traffic and all of these actions on their website, but we really didn't know what was happening after that, where those people were ending up. So we really wanted to focus in on proving the value of what we were providing to them. We were providing a lot of leads, but were they actually valuable to the business? So the strategy that we came up with was, we really wanted to focus on breaking down the wall. So we had conversations with our client, asking them to share back, what counted as a qualified lead for them internally. Was it just somebody filling out their form? Was it just somebody calling their phone number? Or was it, specific types of businesses, or the sales team took specific actions when it was a good lead versus an unqualified lead? What percentage of leads were we driving that were good? So we could better understand our close rate, so to speak, as a marketing team. We were getting a whole bunch of people in there. How many unqualified or less qualified leads did they have to weed through before they got to some of those like winners? And then, using that information, what parts of our marketing coverage were working, which parts were not, so that we could better refine our strategies. So what we did, we had these conversations. We, went back and forth a few times on what information do you need? What can you provide us? And things like that. We ended up getting some really good information from them about leads that came in through ads that ended up closing, and leads that came in through ads that were, people looking for completely different types of businesses or looking for directions or things like that. So we were really able to identify the pieces of our strategy that were driving highly qualified, high value leads for the sales team, and really hone in on expanding in those areas. And then looking at the areas that were driving less qualified traffic and figure out, okay, why, and what can we do to maybe improve or pull back if necessary. So we really were able to identify those gaps and address them pretty quickly once we were able to get that feedback loop started. And it resulted in, I have a whole bunch of numbers at the bottom here, but we really were able to provide like real return on ad spend numbers for them to show the actual bottom line performance of how our ad campaigns were running. And then we were also able to include deeper performance-based reasoning into our strategies and optimization. So we are no longer working within just an ad performance bubble. We're including endpoint bottom line business data as well. And looking at it by the numbers, leads improved by almost 80% month over month. The ratio of qualified to unqualified leads that we were providing improved significantly. Our cost per lead went down over the 10 months of our engagement. The feedback loop started in July, so that's the last 2 months of this 10 months, but we were able really to bring down our cost per acquisition by, like we talked about with that reimagined funnel, bringing more qualified people in at the beginning. So there's a higher likelihood of them converting, ends up being cheaper. And then from a return on ad spend perspective, we're looking at almost 350% return on ad spend year to date, consistent 4-figure return on ad spends over the last handful of months, and consistent month over month per improvement. So it has been working so far. It's going to continue to be an iterative process. I think that is consistent in the industry of digital marketing, is that things are changing, and we have to be agile enough to keep up with it. But having the necessary information to feed back into our strategies and creating these opportunities for streamlining and communication are really vital to continuing to be able to adapt and be agile within our spaces. So that was a lot in a very short amount of time, but that is all I have. Questions, thoughts?
Yes, Jenny, thank you very much. What I love about this, and while we're transitioning to Q&A, is that you and Elizabeth both brought data and stories, not just best practices. And I think that's part of what makes this group extremely valuable and helpful. So I would encourage anybody else that wants to share these types of stories to get in touch. We have a speaker nomination form or a pitch form on DigitalRVA.com too. So if you have stories that you want to share, I find it's the best way to learn, to see what people are actually doing and the results they're getting, not just glossy best practices. So thank you both for bringing the fire today. I see one question from Victoria in the chat. Can you explain the advantages and disadvantages of companies aligned with sales and marketing teams? So are there any disadvantages, perhaps, is a good way of looking at this? Yeah,
I mean, there's going to be pros and cons to everything, right? I think the pros here definitely outweigh the cons, but if you're looking from, it can bring up more questions, right? And it can kind of, from an understanding perspective, like you hire people into certain roles for, their skill set in that role. And if somebody in a sales team or somebody in a marketing team isn't fully up to speed on what the other people are doing, it can initially, I think, create some confusion or some, need for education. So I wouldn't necessarily say long-term disadvantages, but when you're starting to break down those walls, it can be kind of like it gets worse before it gets better situation, but something that's going to require more time and more effort up front before you can get to the point where it becomes a more smooth and more seamless feedback loop. So, educating from the sales to the marketing team standpoint, what they're looking for, what they need, how they do things from a sales standpoint, and then the same from a marketing standpoint. So time, I would say, would be maybe in the disadvantages column. Upfront time and upfront effort, and being able to have the bandwidth and the resources to allocate to that can be a challenge for sure.
Yeah, I've seen examples where sales and marketing are so disaligned or out of alignment at the beginning that this type of effort runs into some friction when you kind of lose track of that mentality of the rising tide lifts all ships, because there's still this habit or tendency to try to take credit for everything, right? The lift in sales or the lift in leads, or shift the blame, right? So with this kind of initiative, it works better when everybody's on the same page and sharing in the results, good or bad, right? There can't be any finger pointing at this point. It's got to be something where you approach it collaboratively to figure it out.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes it can be very much like a breaking down and rebuilding kind of a process, where you have to break down expectations or previously set perceptions and expectations and rebuild together, rather than trying to force fit two teams that maybe haven't worked together in a long time.
Right. Yeah. One other way I've seen this go sideways is in companies that have multiple divisions, whether it's by region or by product line or service line, and those divisions each have their own sales teams. So there might be one lead that comes in through the website, and there might be, in some cases, maybe like a drop-down menu that said, what are you interested in, right? So that lead gets routed or funneled to the right sales team based on what that prospect declares in their contact form, or which phone number they call. But sometimes that sales team isn't the best team that's equipped to handle that prospect, right? Maybe their needs are actually different. Maybe after learning more about the product, or the service, that they actually find out they need something different. So if those leads aren't being shared across teams or divisions or departments, that can cause friction too, because it doesn't matter how good your attribution is for that lead. If somebody just puts that lead or that prospect in the waste bin because it's not there, it's not a good fit for them, you're missing an opportunity at the macro level.
Absolutely, which kind of speaks to different point, but like having one internal system for tracking everything, and then making sure that all systems are aligned and everything like that, really giving visibility to all involved parties.